So, our guest today on Sales and Cigars is Brendan Shanahan. And no, Brendan is not the hockey player from the Detroit Red Wings and the St. Louis Blues. He's Brendan Shanahan, the famous radio personality in the St. Louis area. Is that fair, Brendan? Radio personality, is that the right moniker?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I've been on the radio here in St. Louis for almost 30 years. I was on in Chicago before that. That's where I started. I'm from Chicago originally, and
Right.
my first radio days were early on in Chicago, and then came down in the 90s, and I've been on the radio here ever since.
So, where I'd like to go, if you would indulge me, is that you have the business, the PodCast Proshop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about the logo that I noticed a while ago when you agreed to come on the show. And I got a question about the logo.
Sure.
Can we go there?
Absolutely.
So the red lips talking into the microphone.
Yes.
And is that just regular lips, or is that somebody that's got red lipstick on? I mean, I know I'm picking the fly shit out of the pepper, but is that on purpose, or is that just what happened?
No, actually, my son is a communications major, and he was doing something, and one of the things that he loves to do is create graphics and everything like that. And I had been looking for a new logo for the PodCast Proshop. Initially, it was kind of an on-air sign, and it was hanging on a door, and I liked it. It was okay, and for his class, he came up with that logo, and I really liked it. I thought it was kind of neat, and it reminded me of, like the Rolling Stones a little bit, especially being in radio. It reminded me of the Rolling Stones a little bit. And, there was a commercial for one of the radio stations that I worked for, and in the commercial, it was called The Magic Mouth. And a mouth like that was mouthing the words of all the rock songs that our radio station would play. And it was really kind of cool. So a little bit of nostalgia for me inside baseball of why I kind of have that, but and it was totally by accident that my son came up with that, and I was like, you know what, I really like that. I'm gonna use it. And then I had my people take and just enhance it a little bit more, do a little bit more of the detail to it, and just tweak it up a little bit, and that's where we came up with the PodCast Proshop logo. So,
Yeah, I appreciate that, because it looked like a hat tip to the Rolling Stones kind of feel, but then you have the lettering style is sort of a kind of a retro 70s feel to it. I don't know, it had a vibe to it that I wondered if there was some backstory, but your kid helping you come up with it is kind of a cool story. I like it.
Yeah.
But I also like the idea of like a little on air with the sign hanging on a door thing, because it, Pro Shop sort of like gone fishing. I don't know. There was a connection there too.
Yeah.
I like it. So let's talk a little bit about what the hell PodCast Proshop does, because it's not a name that, clearly identifies exactly what you do. It kind of like makes you lean in and wonder a little bit, and kind of be curious. So can you give us a little bit of an explanation, a little bit of understanding of what it is the PodCast Proshop does?
Sure. So through my radio background and learning how to interview people, and my voiceover and production that I've done over the years, I've put together so many shows. And once podcasting started to happen, everybody was doing podcasts, right? And it was like, man, this could be really good. There were so many out there that I'd tune into, and it would be a bunch of people sitting around a kitchen table, and it sounds like this. And hey, well, tell us about your knitting, Aunt Laura. Right. And
Right.
it was like, man, I wanted them to be good. You know what I mean? I wanted them to be good. So I do enjoy golfing, and I always thought about, when I go to the pro shop, I get the things to help me make my game better,
Or make it more enjoyable.
or make it more enjoyable, right? So my thought of the podcast Pro Shop was how I can help people with a podcast make it better. And again, through the years of coaching that I received, all the stuff that I've done over the years, I've learned how to coach other people and be a consultant when it comes to their stuff. And there's so many people that, younger disc jockeys or radio hosts that I've helped over the years. I mean, even I worked for ESPN station here in St. Louis, and there were some former athletes. One of them was the Hall of Fame pitching coach, Dave Duncan. His son, Chris, played for the Cardinals, played for the Boston Red Sox, and his other son, Shelley, played for Cleveland and a host of other teams. But Chris, when he retired from baseball, he became a personality on the ESPN station here in town. And I'll tell you what, these former athletes, they work their butts off, just like they do when they are training, learning to hit the curveball or practicing getting in a cage and swinging. These guys prep, they take copious notes, and they work their butts off. And
they're probably open to your coaching?
100%. 100%. And, here's this baseball player that, I remember watching him play. His dad is a freaking Hall of Famer. And
right.
he's like, man, Shanny, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm like, just go be yourself. This is you. He's like, yeah, but that's not what I do. I'm a stupid baseball player. And I said, you've got all these notes. Do you really need all that? He said, yeah, I don't want to sound like an idiot. The last thing I need to be is coming on the radio and sounding like a big, dumb jock. He's like, I know what I want to say. I know all these things, but he would take these copious notes. And at first, it was kind of stiff because he was sort of reading through his notes until, we'd have conversations. He'd just pop in my studio before they would go on the air, and we would just talk. And he'd be like, man, I really appreciate that. And you could see it come through because he had the best stories. It was great. I mean, he would talk about, what it was like through the minor leagues, and you get all that quote unquote inside baseball stories too. Mm-hmm. And he wound up being just one of the most beloved, people on the radio station. And, he would have all these little catchphrases. So we created T-shirts. Instead of a dictionary, it was a dunctionary. He would call beers man sodas. He would say, Oppo Taco. Or he'd have, going boomstick, tight cheeks. Someone's got tight cheeks. That means they're all nervous in the batter's box.
Right, tensed up.
So we created these T-shirts that said the Dunctionary and we had all his little slogans on the back, and it became a hugely popular shirt that everybody wanted. We had to do extra ones, and then we did Dunctionary Part 2, things like that. But unfortunately,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, Chris came down with inoperable brain cancer, and had passed away 2 years ago now. So, but man, the leaps and bounds and how beloved he became, and what a great personality. Once he was able to relax and let his personality come out, it was just everybody loved him. Everybody loved him, and it was great. And I felt honored that he let me help him. So, and again, that's the coaching that I like to do.
Right, and there's a comparison is made to athletes and salespeople on a consistent basis, and I think what you the story you just told and that example is a perfect the perfect analogy as to why that's really a flawed metaphor. That the athlete prepares, they work hard, they're in the gym, they're on the field, they're on the court, whatever that is that they're working, they're trying to get better, and they're open to coaching, and they have an inner drive to get better. So if you were trying to coach them on a swing, baseball swing, probably wouldn't have been as open to your coaching. But because you're a pro in the area he was trying to get better at, he would just sit there and soak it up.
Sure.
And listen. And you would have a good time and fun, learning about stories and things. So that idea, most salespeople that we deal with in the world at our company, that's really the big difference, is that there's such a small group of them that want to get better, that will sit there and say, hey, can I ask a couple of questions? And then you're in there, a 30-minute conversation, and there's stories going back and forth. He just needed confidence that he could do it and just have a conversation and be authentic, and that he knew enough to do all of that. He just had to get comfortable. And I'm sure there was some techniques about how to deliver and how to, the way you work with the equipment and such. Those are technical things that he needed to work on. But just being authentic, I think, is a big part of being accepted in that space.
Right.
Am I way off base there?
No, you're definitely in the right area. As far as the technical stuff, luckily in radio, there's always someone who is working the board. Like generally, you're not going to have, the athletes. They're not running the board or anything like that. Even an ESPN corporate or whatever, you're listening to the network radio feeds. Coach and Coleman or something like that. They're not the ones that are running the stuff. Basically, someone is saying we need to take a break, and they'll point to them. They're going to take a break in 5 seconds, and then they know that it's time to wrap up their thought before they take a break, and they'll.
So there's help. There's coaching around all that.
There's somebody that is kind of keeping the ship afloat, steering the boat. But when it's their show, they're steering the direction of the conversation, but somebody's got to keep them on track. Now, that's different with a podcast, because a podcast that you don't necessarily have to take a break. A podcast isn't live. I mean, it can be live, and there's a lot of them that are live, but it generally, when a podcast is being consumed, it's the beauty of it is you can consume it anytime.
Right.
That's the best.
There's not a lot of people lining up to, at least on our show, there's not a lot of people lining up to be able to come in, and we have to do 3 breaks for commercials. That's not happening. We don't have to worry about that at this particular juncture.
Sure.
We're not Joe Rogan. But there's still some pieces where, just getting used to keeping your mouth close to the microphone, and not looking off to the side, and those are things that you sort of find your way in. Because we've got 43 episodes that were in that can. We've been doing it for about 7 or 8 months, and I think there's learning with just about every episode, and being able to work with somebody who that can provide that coaching. I mean, I have sales coaches, I have mentors that I work with, because I'm always trying to get better. So maybe that's where we could go with this, is talk a little bit about sales and cigars inside baseball, if you will. Mm-hmm. We're gonna have you and the PodCast Proshop team coach me and produce our shows, help elevate our game. Because I've done enough of these to know that there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to get better at it. And, I had 30 years of sales experience, but I have, 8 months worth of talking into a microphone and trying to figure out what the hell to say, and how to say it. So I'm sharing that. That's sort of like a new a news break, if you will, that the Sales and Cigars is going to team up with PodCast Proshop, and you're going to be our producer. Is that the right word, Brendan?
Sure, we can. Sure, absolutely. We'll be producing
What would you
we'll
call
be
it?
producing your show. Well, we'll be your producer and consultant. We'll say that, producer and consultant. So we're going to help you out, and because of my connections too, I also we're going to make just add some things to it. Add some things to your game. We're going to put another couple clubs in your bag. And that's the whole point of, you've got this well-established podcast, and you're really doing a great job. I mean, that's not me sucking up to you in any way. I mean, we met kind of by chance. It wasn't like I was, hounding you to come over, but we met, and someone said, you guys should talk. And just through our conversations, it was kind of like, a good fit. You were a person that I felt was looking to get better. And that's one of the things you want. You want someone who is looking to get better, because if someone's not going to want to put in the work, then it doesn't matter what I do to help them. It's going to be the same thing. It's still going to be, let's talk about that knitting, it'll be that way.
But there's a lot of everything that you're saying ties back to sales management, the sales coaching, right? And I'm always looking for that thread, because you saw that I wanted to get better. That's true. I'm not sure how you saw that, but that's true. And when I bring on a client where I want that person, they want to grow, they're committed to it, because it'll get bumpy. Right, and we'll have to work through some stuff. And if somebody's committed and has that desire to learn, much like a guy trying to hit more home runs or to get more on base, right? There's a certain strategy at the plate. What do they have to look for? It takes work.
Absolutely, it does.
And that's what we're looking for. So, and we met through a client, and your nephew.
Yes.
It was just, to me, it was just fun. And it was like, you got to talk to my uncle, because he does all this cool stuff. And I'm like, yeah, right. Okay. And then, because I didn't see the connection at first. And that's why I think that being open to ideas, open to conversations, and trust in other people that know you a little bit can help you make those connections. That's part of the deal as well.
And again, it wasn't like you were calling me to say, hey, I'm interested in doing this. This was more like, hey, I was looking at it as much for how you could help me grow my business, as much as, you might have thought like, well, I don't know what I'm going to get out of this. But as we talked more, I think we kind of, we hit it off in a way that figured that, hey, I think this could be beneficial for both of us if we can work together. And you can use that same theory when you're going out to talk to clients, when you're trying to explore new clients. I mean, we found a common ground that, again, we weren't starting out like, hey, we're going to go into a business adventure, because you're doing your podcast now, and you're doing a great job with it. But again, can I help you take it to another level? Yes, I probably can. In fact, I know I can. Because you are willing to learn. And that's where a lot of people have, like I said, they're sitting around the table and they're doing these things. Podcasts, anybody can do a podcast. You can download an app and you can do a podcast. It's just a matter of what you want to do with it. And you've already broken through, because there's so many people out there who will start a podcast and they won't make it past episode 5. It sounds like a lot of fun in the beginning, but at the same time, if you want it to be good, it takes a little work,
it takes work to find the right people to talk to. It takes work to put the structure together. What are the right tools? Because I decided that I didn't want to make the sausage. Right, I wanted to do the front end of it, and do the conversation, have that piece. But in terms of cutting it up and producing it, and that's not my thing. I'm not good at it. But when I decided to do it, it took a while to get there. But if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do one a week, and I'm going to do one a week, and I'm going to do one a week, and then it becomes a habit. And we've been doing it for a while. So there's a I think there's a little bit of, I've gotten a little bit better, gotten a little bit more comfortable. I started out without video because this is a face for radio.
Yes. I'm aware of that.
As they say.
I have one too.
And I just don't like I don't like getting my picture taken. I don't like being front and center. I got to do a speech in a couple of months, and I'm fine with the topic. I can go talk to people, but just the idea I'm like there, that makes me I don't like that. So but even with what you were saying when we first started talking, and it was we had the same approach. You weren't trying to sell something, you weren't pitching, and you weren't right, and that's not how we teach people to go about. I just saw like a kindred approach to helping people. That's the goal. Mm-hmm. If maybe I can help somebody, maybe I get something out of it at some point down the road. And that's just how we've always approached business, and I think that was part of the attraction.
And you know what? That goes back to how I grew up. I'm the youngest of 9 kids, and everybody always pitched in. My dad was, somebody needed help, he always said, you dial S. Dial S for Shanahan, and we'll be there, And it was always, it's just been ingrained into me. And there's so many times, even over the years, whether, I'll help somebody with doing a project, and like, oh my God, I owe you so much. I'm like, it's fine. I didn't, it was just a little bit of, help here or there, and it's great. And then I have so many other people saying, are you crazy? What are you giving this away for? Like, that's just, it's in my nature. I want to do that. I coached all my kids' sports. At one point I was coaching 5 teams because I wasn't getting money for it. It was because
Joy.
I enjoyed it, and I saw that there was a need for it. There was some, hey, you guys are doing a great job over here, but if we organize this just a little bit, it's we can make that better. And especially with young kids, for some reason I've always been able to just be like, hey, you guys you're doing this over here, and I would turn things into a game for them, and before they knew it, they were practicing something, and
right.
and
they didn't know it,
and they didn't know it. They had no idea that they were practicing how to do handoffs. They thought they were playing a game called Feed the Gator. But in essence, they were doing handoffs, and all these kids learned how to take a handoff. And it was great. And before you knew it, these kids weren't dropping, they weren't fumbling the handoffs, and
but that came through with something that you said earlier when podcasts started to come about, and there was everybody out there doing them, and you started listening to them, and you had this urge, at least this is what I heard, you had this urge to be like, oh, if they just did this, I could help them, make it sound so much better. I could help them do a little bit better job. And my gut told me you wanted to do that just to help them, not to get a fee. It was just like, I know I can help this guy. And I don't know, I could relate to that.
That's 100% true. I drive my wife crazy with that stuff too. Whether it's a commercial I see on TV, or I hear somebody talking, or I'm listening to another DJ on the radio, and I'll be like, "Wrap it up, guys! Wrap it up! Wrap it up! No! Come on now! Just come on! You're going too long. That's."
Yep.
It was a great segment, but you let it go too long, fellas.
And you just did it. This is how I would always describe it. I lived in New York, and I would get up in the morning, I would turn on the radio, or wake up to the radio, and I'd listen to Howard Stern for about 8 minutes, maybe 10. And then he was funny, right? And I'm not taking a shot at Howard Stern.
No, it's fine.
A pro. But he would just take something and he would just go where it stopped being funny, where it started being uncomfortable. And I know that's what he was trying to do,
Right.
that whole shocky thing. But for my taste, it's like, this is funny, this is funny. All right, cut it, stop, no, stop. And then boof, he was gone. And I would just turn it to Imus and switch. But I did it every day. I always started with Stern, and then I'd end up with Imus before I left the place. But I'll have people come to the house, contractors or something, start trying to sell us something, and I'd listen to them talk, and I would just walk away. And my wife would be like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "He doesn't know what he's doing."
It kind of drives you crazy, doesn't it?
And he's like, "Well," I said, "You're talking about the product." And he's like, "Yeah, well, you're looking to buy at the time it was a washer and dryer." I'm like, "Yeah, that's what we're here to do. But you have no idea why we want to do it, how important it is. You don't understand, what it is that we're looking to, what the space looks like, what's important to her, how much I care, who's making the decision. You just started pitching this machine.
Mm-hmm.
You suck."
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, "Well, that's what I'm taught." And I'm like, "I know, it's not your fault. But if you start having a conversation with somebody about what's important to them, why they need this, when they need this, and you get into a conversation about what's important, the solution will pop up because you know all of your product, right? I don't care about the 45 washer and dryers you have here. I care about the one that I'm going to buy, and I don't want to look at 45. She does."
Right.
But I only want the one that's going to make a difference. And I don't really care if it's $300 more than the other one if it does what we want it to do.
You want the one that makes the round whiskey balls for your whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. But when I go look at a refrigerator, first question, let's talk about the ice machine.
Yeah.
Right? That'll be, and that's something that we got to do. So, but I mean, to me, I was actually trying to help the guy get better, and that's all I wanted to do. I mean, I did it in a way that maybe I was kind of a dickish way to do it, but he listened, and he completely switched his questioning. Well, he started questions, and we got someplace where we needed to go. We bought a washer and dryer from him, and he asked for my card. And I'm like, "Look, I'm happy to call me whenever you want and ask a question. These people are never going to hire us because they don't care about good salesmanship. They care about moving the tin on the floor.
Sure.
But I'm happy to help you if you want to get better." And I think the guy called me once over the last couple of years, but give him credit for that. But to me, that all came through, and I think it's just part of how you're raised, how you're taught. And eventually you do have to put your hand out and put some value on what it is you're doing.
Sure.
But I don't think you got to do that out of the box.
No, that's probably one of the last things I talk about when it comes to, when I have a client that is interested. I get phone calls all the time. People saying, I was recommended to you by so and so. So somebody has worked with you a lot in the past, whether it be me doing voiceover work for them or producing a radio or TV commercial for them or producing a podcast. I get calls all the time for, because people have had a good experience working with me and they know that I wasn't just there saying, a lot of times people say, "Well, how much for me to do a 60-second commercial?" Well, I mean, it depends. What do you want? We can do whatever you want. If you just want to do something simple, you want me to read something, and just have it be a plain dry commercial, well, that's going to be one thing. But what do you want to do with it? Do you want to make that commercial better? Do you want me to help you write it? Because I can write them. I've been writing and producing commercials for 30 years. I've not to pat myself on the back, but I've won
Some big awards.
some very big awards for that. Some of the
Yeah.
biggest awards you can win in radio for this. But that's not even. I don't even bring that up. It's kind of like that's one of the. Oh yeah, I did do this. It
By
sounds,
the way,
yeah, it sounds like the cliche, like, oh, I keep my Oscar in the bathroom. Do you?
No, you don't. But that's
don't.
not the point.
Yeah, it's the stuff is up on the wall and things like that, and I've got they're fine. Awards are great, but really they're just something extra to dust.
Yeah.
They're great.
There's an award sitting in the house in a box. To me, yeah, it's this little $8 piece of plastic with a plaque on it with my name on it. Right? That doesn't really mean a lot. It gives you a credential, right? But that's my award. Your award's much more significant.
Well,
But let me go back to something that you said. That when they ask you about what's it going to cost for a 60-second commercial, have you ever said to them, wrong question?
I kind of just avoid it.
Have you ever done it? You ever done it that way and that much in their face?
I have not. I have not, because and I know that it's because they don't know any better. You know what I mean? They just think they've got a business. They want to have a commercial. Hey, what's it going to cost me for this? And if you've got a
Right.
radio salesperson, generally they'll be like, oh, we can help you out. It's going to be so much for every 60-second spot. If you want to advertise in a morning show, it's going to be, $300 a spot. And if you want to do, add that throughout the day, say $150 for the midday, $250 for the afternoon. And if you want to run something after 7 o'clock and overnight, it's going to be much cheaper. That's
But
that
you're
sort
going
of
to
answer.
spend 20, 30 grand a month to do a program, right?
But and again, that's not necessarily helping that client.
not.
So
It's not.
later on, one of the things that I did at the radio station was I was going through and helping new businesses brand themselves, or businesses that were established expand their brand. So I would go on sales calls with the salespeople, and I would talk to them about what they're doing and how I would produce their commercial. And I had no idea. And I would tell them, I'd say, look, I have no idea how much you're spending. I have no idea, what day parts you're doing, because that means nothing to me. I have no concern over when you're advertising or how much you're spending.
Not my department.
My job is to make you sound better. My job is to help you get your name out there, to expand your brand. One of the things on my daily radio show, I have one of my sponsors is Mascots Bar and Grill, and my show's called The Legendary Lunch, and they happen to be this place that during the pandemic I really loved how they were trying to struggle and keep up, and they were, helping out everybody in the community. And I really like this place. I'm like, man, I want to help them. I want to help them in some way, shape, or form. So I went there after, things sort of let up a little bit and people were able to go to bars and go to restaurants. And I said, I love what you've done. I want to help you. I can get you some very great rates. So don't even worry about the rates, but what I think I can do is help you get your name out. And I want more people to know what a great establishment this is, because they're always doing stuff for the community. They're doing stuff for fallen soldiers. And it's just a fun place to go hang out. And they have these delicious burgers, and they're giving it for $5 for a burger and fries. I was like, man,
$5.
$5 for a burger and fries. This is better than any fast food burger you're going to find. It's great. And such a deal. And and I said, hey, I'll tell you what, let me call this the Legendary Lunch Special. And he said, okay. I said, I will help you out, and I will push people here for you because I want them to know about you. And I started talking about the burgers on the show. I'm like, look, this is No joke. Go there, try it out. Tell them you're FOS, you're a friend of Shanny's, and you want to try this legendary lunch special. And the best part is it's so delicious, and you don't have to do the dishes. Well, that has now printed. The so delicious, and you don't have to do the dishes. That I literally have people saying to me like, man, I tried the burger and it was awesome. And the best part, I didn't have to do the dishes, you know? So it's always fun when people will repeat back to you.
Oh yeah, that's how you know it worked.
Absolutely. Right. You know that something is printed with them, and that's good. That's the stuff that gives me the feeling. I don't want to say as much as money. I mean, because we all need money to pay the bills. I mean, obviously, you know, somebody's saying "attaboy," I can't send that off to, you know, AT&T and get my phone bill paid with attaboys. But at the same time, inside, I know it sounds cliche and weird and everything, but that's part of what makes me tick. I like that part, you know.
But it speaks to it speaks to the point of being empathetic, right? Because to me, it's about having a conversation with somebody. It's about being empathetic. It's about being curious, and it's about trying to figure out what the right thing to do for somebody is. That's the job of a salesperson, and we don't get that by pitching, right? And I have a similar moniker that I want to get paid, yes, right, because of all the reasons we know. But to me, the thing that makes my day, and John did this to me it was right after Thanksgiving. He called me up and he said, "You know the thing that you told me that I should try?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I tried it." I'm like, "Yeah." "It worked. I got a meeting with the guy." And his energy went up. He was excited. I said, "Dude, you have no idea. You made my week."
Right.
Just not so much what you said, but how you said it, because you've never been that animated before. You were excited. And I'm just, to me that I was out for a walk on the Strip in Vegas, and he made the day, he made the week, and I was floating around. So it gives us energy to do all the other things that we got to do that we don't really want to do, right? So that's why, I mean, we were taught to do it. We were trained to do that. It's the right thing to do, but we do get something back in that level of energy, and the world brings it back to us. It does, and we don't always realize it. If we're open to it, and if we're really paying attention and being open and being appreciative, we see it. But I think that's the approach that most salespeople, and that's kind of where I'd like to land, because that's the vibe I got from you initially. That let's try to figure out if I can even help you.
Right.
And that's my approach. Like, why am I here? What can we do? And when somebody comes to me and it's like, how much for the thing? I'm like, that's really the wrong question for this. Or I've told them, like, look, what do you sell? And the guy was like, I sell tires. Like, great. I need tires for my car. How much? And he's like, well, what kind of car? What kind of tires? I mean, there's all kind. I'm like, yeah. And at the time I was selling signs. I'm like, you get it? And he goes, yeah, you probably need to come out, take a look, ask me some questions. Kind of. But if you're only worried about the cheapest little deal, let's not bother. Because I'm never the cheapest. I'm never the most expensive. I'm worried about getting you what you need. He was sold right then, and we figured out the right thing to do for him. That's why I always flip that, and it's like, wrong question, dude. We gotta figure out what it is you're trying to achieve and what it is you really need. It might cost you a lot less than what you think, or it might cost you a lot more. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Should we keep talking? Is sort of that idea.
And it is all about learning and exploring. Like, I had another client who's now, this guy went from being a mortgage broker who would a one-man shop, right? One-man shop, and he started advertising on our ESPN station. And he used to call himself the home loan expert, or he calls himself the home loan expert. I'll help you out. Here's my personal cell phone number. Call me. and I'll get you on. And he was kind of very animated, especially on a, call me right now, you can do this, blah, 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 and people reacted and they called him. And he blew up. And he owned that ESPN station. Like, he was like the number one advertiser on that radio station, and he grew. And we had a group of other radio stations. He said, hey, I think I want to expand and do something on some of the other radio stations. So he was taking that same commercial that he was using on the ESPN station and trying to play it on our country station and our adult contemporary station. Well, he wasn't getting the same sort of reaction. But that's because on the ESPN station, he was kind of not necessarily yelling, but he was like, hey, here's what you need to do, blah, 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 blah. He was trying to coach them in a way on the commercial of what they need to do, right? Well, if you're a listener to ESPN, or there's a good chance you've played sports in the past and you've been coached. So you're a coachable person. So that way helped. It printed with those people that were the listeners of ESPN. Now, I said to him, I'm like, Ryan, I said, if we're going to go on these other stations, just talk to them. Tell them this. Tell them how you're going to help them. You don't have, just dial it back to a 7 from your 10. And he just started talking to them. And it grew. Now you can see him all over Cardinal Stadium. He's expanded into 6 different markets. This guy bought Chris Carpenter's, the Hall of Fame pitcher from the Cardinals, bought his house when he left. So he went from this guy who was literally just driving around in his Toyota Corolla with his cell phone, telling people to call him, to he's the guy. Yeah, he is the home loan expert. I mean, and everybody knows who Ryan Kelly is. And he's in, like I said, 5-6 different markets now, and he's killing it. But he was authentic. He was authentic. He was who he was. And again, he was open to that coaching. He was open to the coaching as much as he was wanting to coach people how to get better mortgage rates. Saying everybody can do this. It's a matter of this. This is the part you're looking at. Everybody says, 3.8% financing or whatever the rate is. Well, everybody gets that. But what's the difference? What makes me different from these 15 other places that can get me that same rate? And it's not 30%. It's not 20%. It's that 3 or 4% that guy brought to the party that made that difference. That was what was different. He made it easy. He made it fun. He made it whatever that was, and it probably changed from person to person. Sure. But that was his difference, and I think people try to think that difference needs to be something major, and it doesn't. You just need to be real and be clear about what that delta is, what your differentiation really is, and sometimes that's just being open and honest. Right. Absolutely. And not pitching. Stop doing what your competitors are doing immediately, and start being just straightforward, honest, and just be who you are. And if you're a scumbag, be a scumbag, because you'll run yourself out of the market. You'll be, but I just don't think we should try to be somebody we're not. But we have to be clear about who it is we're trying to help. Sure. Right. And your point about ESPN, country station, that message just needed to be tweaked just a little bit, to be able to get those people to pay attention, because they weren't listening to the crazy, because soccer moms were saying, why is this guy yelling at me? Right. And when he turned it from yelling, because he thought like, hey, come on, I'm trying to get your attention. And he was saying it like a coach. But, and again, you know what? My kids understand, because they've all played sports their whole lives. They know that coaches are saying, hey, remember to get in your stance, do this correct, look for the open man, whatever you're doing. Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells not going to work really well at the Saturday morning soccer fields with those soccer moms, right? It's just a different mentality. So let's land it there. I want to kind of
I want to just touch on before we go, and I never ask you this, but does cigars play any part in your life? Have you ever, your grandfather, anybody that you've, you know, connected with cigars?
There's two big cigar stories that I think of in my life. And one was one of my best friends. His dad was that cigar smoke. He always had that cigar. Whether it was lit or not, it was always in his mouth. And we'd go to his house, and the house just always and it's just got that unique smell in it. This the difference between a cigar smell and like someone who just smokes cigarettes, and they've got the yellow
Cigarettes,
walls.
pipes, and cigars are three distinct, different
Wholeheartedly.
smells.
Yes. So I always equated it with my buddy Brian's dad, the cigars. And then as I got older, I'd get somebody be smoking a cigar, and it would take me there. And then that, and I always thought of Colombo. It's like, pardon me, excuse me, man, but is this your dog over here? And he'd always have that short cigar. So I always kind of thought of Brian's dad and Colombo the same way. And then when I got married, my mother-in-law, no matter what it was really, really against smoking, no matter what. Well, a friend of
Whatever
mine,
it was.
A friend of mine brought Cubans. He was in the military, and he brought back a bunch of Cubans he's like, hey, we're gonna smoke these at your wedding. And one of my favorite pictures is all of us standing outside the country club where we got married, smoking cigars. But I had to do something. My mother-in-law loved the song The Macarena. She was a 5th grade teacher, and during the day she would play that for her classes.
You're dating yourself, Brendan.
Well,
you're dating yourself.
You look at me. You can tell that I'm old. All right? So I got married very young, at 11. I got married at 11.
Sure.
So
10, 11 years old. Got it. I understand.
So she loved the Macarena, but me being around, I'm like, Macarena. I don't want to play Macarena. So I had a deal with a DJ. I said, well, when we're going to go out and smoke the cigars, I'm going to tell the DJ to play the Macarena at that point, so I know that she'll be out on the dance floor doing the Macarena, and that was our chance to be able to go out front and smoke our cigars, and it was great. And that picture pops up every year in my memories, and it's always one of my favorite. We're all, we're smoking these Cuban cigars, and it was just a lot of fun. Plus, and I guess thirdly, I did a commercial for a cigar bar here in St. Louis, and it's called Aiello's Cigar Bar, and they gave me sort of carte blanche to do whatever I wanted to do. And the guy, people know him as Joey Smokes, right? Joey Smokes owns Aiello's. Yeah.
Love it.
So I went through, and he's this little Italian guy, So I kind of...
Go figure.
I did this little skit where it was two guys talking like, hey, do me a favor, go over to Joey Smokes' place and see what's happening with the bocce ball leagues, okay? Well, you're there, pick me up a couple cohibas. And it's like, yeah, that's what I mean, boss. We'll go do that for you. Hey, last I heard, the firemen were in first place. I think we need to take them over. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, don't be spending all day over on the patio hanging out watching the baseball game, okay? I need some of these, and wound up being like, people would be like, oh my God, I love that Aiello cigar. And, I had the little Italian music in the background, and then,
Of course.
And then you break in, it's like, hey, go visit Joey Smokes over at Aiello Cigar Bar. Just tell him that Fat Tony sent you. And, right. And
they loved it, right?
And they loved it. Yeah, the spot ran for years and years and years until I left that station, and they wanted to redo it. And they had somebody else redo it. And they sent it to me. I'm like, oh. They ran for another round, and that was it. And they stopped advertising. So it was so that's kind of my cigar stories, and I do enjoy, especially while I'm out on the golf course or something like that. I do enjoy a nice cigar while just out relaxing on a beautiful day like today. It's 78 degrees here in St. Louis right now. It's crazy.
I don't want to hear it, dude.
Sorry.
I don't want to hear it.
Sorry.
I mean, we have a nice day here in early March at 45 and sunny.
Yeah, St.
And
Louis,
when I
you
got
never
up,
know.
it was 27. Yeah, well, Michigan, if we don't like the weather, you wait a minute and it changes.
St. Louis, it's like that as well.
But yeah, we're in the Midwest.
Yeah.
It's what it is. So, last question before we go: what's your smoke of choice if you're on a golf course? What's your go-to? If somebody else is buying, put it that way.
I do like the Cohiba. It's just it's
You like a big full-bodied cigar?
Well, so here's the part with it, because it's one of those that I'll smoke for a little bit and then stop, and I can go back to it. I can't keep it going. I do. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I am a cigar aficionado. Most of the cigars that I've had in my life are me going, "Oh, congratulations on your new baby." You know what I mean? Do you have any bubblegum cigars? Because but I do enjoy a cigar, especially if I'm having, if you're out there on the links and it's just a beautiful day, maybe you've got a frosty one, or you've got maybe a cocktail after at the 19th hole, and you're just sitting out there like, yeah, this was a good day. It's kind of like that ultimate relaxation thing.
Celebratory.
It is, yeah. It's celebratory thing is like you want to be Joe Burrow after winning the national championship. So
yeah,
that's
not the
that's
Super Bowl,
someone
but the national championship.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm sure he had a cigar after that, but it was not so much celebratory after the Super Bowl. That's a guy you need to get on the podcast. Is Joe Burrow.
I don't have a connection to Joe Burrow, but I would be open to that. If Joe, you're listening, I love the, I'm a Michigan grad, Michigan fan, but there's a special place at LSU for me just because of Les Miles went there to coach, and he just brought that mentality, that sort of that Michigan piece to it. And I know Joe wasn't there, but I don't know. He's got this swagger that's not really a swagger, right? He's not cocky. He's not arrogant. He's just got this, tape it up. I'll rub some dirt on it. Let me get back in there, because he got his bell rung in that game.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, he was hurt.
Well, there's people that have that it factor. They just do, and it makes a difference. It really does. I mean, a guy like Brad Pitt. Think about that. He's an incredibly handsome man. He doesn't even have to be a great actor, and he'd probably do well, right? But the guy's got some acting chops as well. George Clooney got some acting chops as well. They're more than just that. They have that sort of it factor, and there's just something.
Brad worked at it though.
Sure, absolutely.
Brad worked pretty hard at it.
Absolutely. And
isn't he from some little?
He's from
town in Missouri.
Yeah. He's from Springfield, Missouri, right in that area. He went to Mizzou, I think, for a short time as well, or at least pretended to go to Mizzou. Flopped on people's couches out there. So
yeah, there was Mark Maron did an interview with him, a combo with him and DiCaprio, and I'm not a DiCaprio fan, but I think Brad's real, authentic, funny. Because in that interview, he's like, look, I got a pretty successful career. As long as nobody wants to talk about my personal life, because that is a mess, right? But he's, professionally, he's got his act together.
Sure.
'Cause he's women and problems, but he can laugh at it, right? He knows it's a mess. But he's like a real. You could go have a beer with him. He's a real guy, I think. If you could get past all the security people.
What is your favorite cigar?
Padron 4000.
Okay. And again,
if I had to be locked up in an island all by myself with just one type of cigar, I've never had a bad one. Never had a bad burn. Never. I mean, never. They never canoe. They're just perfectly made, consistently taste the same. They're a great cigar.
There was I think it was called a Don Vito that they had at Aiello's that they gave me one. I think it was a Don Vito. Again, like I said, I'm not a cigar aficionado, so for me to sit here and pretend like I'm going to wax intellectual and
like
tell
what
you
you like.
Right.
You like what you like. It's like drinking wine. You like what you like. That's all that matters.
The Cohiba sticks in my head because that's one that I remember having multiple times that people had given me and said, "Hey, here, I got a Cohiba for you." Okay. And I just knew what that was. And to me, that was, that was the cigar. So that was like if somebody said, "Hey, we've got all these cigars. What would you like?" Well, I knew the Cohiba. So that's the one I would take. But to be experimental and go and try a new one, I need that. I need somebody to kind of walk me through it.
Go to Joey Smokes. Go see Joey Smokes and say, "Hey, I like this cigar.
Mm-hmm.
What else you got? I want to do something different." If you got a good guy in the humidor, and you can tell him what you like and what you don't like, you can go experiment to your heart's content.
And
that's what makes it fun.
And they pair different. It's no different than a wine or a whiskey or anything like that,
Nope.
right?
It compare. I think it's a little bit different in that it pairs with food and mostly drink, right? Not so much food, but your mood has a way of affecting that cigar's how you experience it, right? Probably like everything else, but I've made that connection with a cigar that if you have a certain vibe about you for the day, and the cigar might taste different at the beginning of the day, in the afternoon with some friends on a golf course, if you're just sitting in your cigar room, that has an effect on the experience. And to me, it's like what do you like? And I never try one cigar and say this sucks, I'll never do it again. I'll usually give it another shot. It's like people. I'll give somebody a second chance.
Sure.
Rarely do I give them a third chance. But in cigars the same way. I'll give it a second chance. But they're different cigars for different. They're different things. My grandmother passed away about 11 years ago, and I have a tradition that I take a Padron 1964 anniversary cigar to the cemetery on her birthday, because on my birthday that year she bought me 2 of those cigars, and that's a nice sort of expensive cigar. I don't smoke that every day, and I found them in my humidor right after Thanksgiving. My grandmother was born on December 7th, so I'm like, I'm gonna go see Grandma and say thanks for this cigar. And I've been doing that ever since. Unfortunately, December 7th in Michigan, it's fucking cold.
Yeah.
So the cigar burns a little quicker. But it's sort of a tradition. So that, to me, that cigar is tied to that.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely do I have that cigar for any other purpose. That's me and my grandmother.
When we talked about my friend's dad, I remember I think it was the Dutch Masters. Is that what those Dutch Masters and Garcia Vegas were the cigars
Garcia Vegas.
The Garcia Vegas and the Dutch Masters were the ones that I remember him smoking most of the time, and I just remember seeing the box. You'd always see the box there, and everybody had, it was always cool to get.
Back then, you used it as a school box for your pencils.
I was just going to say, one of the best things about that is you'd get hey, what are you gonna? Can I have the cigar box? What are you gonna do? Make a banjo? No, I just that's where I want to keep my stuff. Or
right.
Yeah. So that's.
God forbid you take a cigar box to school these days. You probably get kicked out.
Yeah. It's times have changed a lot, haven't they?
They have, and let's not go to woke situations. But those are great cigar stories.
Thank you.
Right, and those the thing that it brings back a memory. that the sense of smell is such a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
My wife doesn't like cigar smoke. She tolerates it because I have it, but I don't do it in house. So one day we're out for a walk, and I'm smoking a Cuban cigar, and we're about 500 yards into the walk, and she's like, "What are you smoking?" And I'm like, "Why?" Because I never know where she's gonna go. She's like, "Well, that smells like the cigar that my grandfather would smoke when I was younger. We would go off into the woods and go for a walk as a family, and that smells exactly like what he would smoke." And I was smoking a Cuban Romeo and Juliet. And it turned out, when she did some little research, that was the cigar that he smoked.
Wow.
It was Cuban because he was in Germany. So that sense of smell, that kind of clicked for me that it is different. Those cigars are different, not just in smell but in taste. So, Brendan, this was a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to working together with you. Great stories. We connect on a sales level. I mean, what we do is sort of the same approach. So this is going to be fun. I really appreciate you taking some time.
No, I you know what? When you asked me to be on the show as well, I was like, that's great. It sounds like fun. I love doing this. I really truly do. I love being on other people's shows, and a lot of the podcasts that I've worked with people in the past is I would, especially if they're starting out, I kind of hold their hand, and I'll start off and I'll be on the show with them, and I don't really talk about myself. So it would be, hey, welcome to the show. This is Sales and Cigars with Walter Crosby. Walter, tell us about this. So I'm just sort of leading them in until they get more
Facilitating.
comfortable. Right. Yes. But again, I'm there on the show being the regular guy, and it's not about me. I'm there to be the point guard, to make them better, and let them hit the shots.
It takes a special skill set to do that, though. It really does.
Well, and again, that goes in with the coaching and everything, that it's just kind of ingrained in me, and I can't help myself but want to do that when I see that I can't help.
Don't try to stop, because that's what makes you unique, and that's gonna help you, and hopefully I'm able to demonstrate the positive experience. Hopefully I'm a good enough student to do that, but we're going to help you get busier than you care to be. That's my goal.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Busy's great. Thank
you,
Walter.
Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.